Welcome back. Well, for the markets, it's steady, so up around 0.7% currently for the mid-cap index. Just want to point out that a couple of stocks are seeing a bit of pressure. So Godfrey Phillips is down around 2.5% at this point in time. We have a couple of others such as Concor. And Nimesh did mention those brokerage reports. That stock is down around 1% Narayana Health is also seeing some amount of profit taking, so down around 1% currently. But overall, the entire breadth of the market is favoring the advances. So there are over 1,600 stocks advancing and around 800 stocks which are declining on the National Stock Exchange. So it currently stands at around 2:1, very healthy in terms of an advance decline ratio, which is sustaining, as you can see, at this point in time. But let's now go across to Manisha, our commodities editor, for our commodity update on the show.
Thank you so much for that, Ekta. And joining us on the show now is Vikram Dhawan. He's Fund Manager, Commodities at Nippon India Mutual Funds. Vikram, hi, and what an exciting time to be in gold and silver. And I'll start with gold first. And we've seen ETF buying kind of pick up, not just in India, but the global markets as well. But more than that, congratulations, because you feature in the top 10 when it comes to gold ETFs. One, how does that feel? And two, how are the numbers looking?
Thank you very much, Manisha, for inviting me on your show. And thank you very much for your wishes. And I think I would also like to congratulate you that because of your efforts and the efforts of the channel and the kind of content you have, the Indian investors have been able to ride the entire bull cycle of both gold and silver, which puts them in a very enviable and a unique position, because not all across the world, investors have been able to ride the entire bull cycle. And as we have seen, that while the ETF flows are picking up, but if you see post-COVID, the ETF AUMs are still down by about 30%. So I think it's kudos to the Indian investors, and we are very extremely grateful and extremely fortunate to be part of this story.
Oh, yes. And Vikram, would you say that, especially with the sovereign gold bonds kind of out of the market, the ETFs really got all those investors coming in too?
So I think, to be honest, Manisha, even when the sovereign gold bonds were in full swing, we did have decent flows into ETFs, because one of the reasons why people invest in gold is because of liquidity. And that is one attribute which attracts the central banks also to gold. And ETF is perhaps the most liquid form of gold going around, even compared to physical gold, and definitely a lot more liquid than SGBs. I'm glad that the SGB story is fading, not because of the flows that may come into ETF, but because of the SGB. The whole bullion market was distorted because it led to a lot of wrong type of expectation from the investors. I mean, instead of investing into gold for the diversification and the liquidity, etc., I think the investor expectations were more on the tax benefit and the coupon, etc. So I think this is a very good plus for the overall bullion market, into which we are also one of the stakeholders.
So Vikram, as the market stands right now, what really has been the trend for this financial year until now? What is the kind of net inflows have we seen? What is the AUM that you're managing for gold and silver as well?
So I think the flows have been very decent this year across the industry, and they are picking up across the world. I mean, just to give you an example, that the flows this year in the gold ETFs in India are almost 3 to 4x of what we saw last financial year. And I think this will only accelerate, primarily because of the awareness and also the portfolio diversification story. The multi-asset story is picking up in India. And as I've always maintained that as the size of the portfolios increase, the diversification is very important, and gold ticks all the boxes as far as the diversification or hedging of the portfolio is concerned. And amongst all of this, the most liquid form of gold is gold ETFs. So I think it's a story which is just picking up. But again, having said that, if you look at the entire gold market in India, which is roughly about 3 to 4 lakh crores, the flows into ETFs are still very paltry, about 3 to 4% of the entire market. So I think we can only go higher from here.
And what about silver? Because that really seems to be picking up as well, and more participants joining in. What is the AUM there, and how have you seen that one grow?
So I think silver, it has got a very important utility because silver is a lot more bulkier than gold. So we are seeing that the traditional physical buyers or investors of silver are shifting into ETFs, and that has just begun because roughly about 15 to 20% of silver which is consumed in India is for investment purposes. So I think that silver story will pick up even further, and as we have seen, the ramp up in the AUM in silver has been a lot faster than gold because of this reason.
Well, absolutely. The way the markets have started to buy into gold and silver, Vikram, more gold rather, and the way the prices have been making all-time highs, are any redemptions that you're looking at? Or do you think, or have you seen people buying even at these current levels?
So I think if you look at the gold story as of now, this is a very unique bull market for both gold and silver, where the investment flows and the speculative flows have either been flat or negative. So this is a bull run in both silver and gold, which is a lot more resilient than the past ones, which is being appreciated by the market. Obviously, when you talk about gold, central banks are the elephant in the room. And even this year also, I mean, they have been buying large quantities since 2022. 22-23 were the years where they bought roughly about 2 to 2.5x of what they usually buy. And we have seen same run rate being maintained by the central banks this year also. And if you talk about silver, the story which stands out for silver is green tech, and the fundamentals of silver, the demand supply gap is fairly tight, and it is the fourth year in deficit. So I think there is this long-term, story of gold. And one thing I like to tell your viewers is that the central bank holding of U.S. Treasuries 25 years back was about 75 to 80% of their total portfolio, which is not now gone down to below 60%. Now, you may argue it's a very glacial trend, but if this trend was to continue for another decade or so, then the US dollar holding will actually be a minority holding in portfolios of most central banks. So we are definitely moving towards, notwithstanding what is happening on geopolitics or the other, economics and everything, but I think we may be moving towards a world which looks a lot different than what it was 20, 30 years back. And I think when you are moving into uncertain times, gold is one of the few, assets that you want to have in your portfolio. So I think you may see a quarter of volatility, redemption going, but I think the long-term story of gold and silver is intact. And I think we expect the flows, not only in India, but across the world to continue over the longer period of time.
Well, that's exactly what the markets believe as well, is the reason that we haven't seen any big correction or decline in gold prices. Every small dip has seen more buying and more all-time highs. Vikram Dhawan, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So clearly the global map and the global financial map also seems to be changing, and gold really seems to be finding a strong space within that. But with that, that's all the time on the show. After a short break, we'll come back with Business Lunch that will take all the action forward.